I'm here with Rachel Truxell. She's the Corporate Director of Business Development at InSearch Site Network. It's a business development organization. A big question for a lot of sites right now is what's going to happen to their study pipelines. Since Rachel's on the front line of business development, we thought she could give us a firsthand view. So, Rachel, just tell us a little bit about yourself and about InSearch.
Okay, well, I'm the corporate director, like you said, of business development for InSearch Site Network. I've been here since December and I've headed the team since January. InSearch is our parent company's amplified clinical research, and we do have 5 owned sites and then more than 20 in our affiliate network. I think we're up to 24. Prior to coming on board here at BD, I was with a prior company overall patient acquisition as well as some BD. As you probably know, that you can't have business development without the patient. So it's all pretty much intermingled. But my background is in public health. Prior to that, about 15 years experience. So I like to bring the public health side, finding the demographics and the patients and looking at a different picture versus just basic statistics. So anyways, and I'm heading BD and loving it.
Got it. And so just for everyone's benefit, BD refers to business development, which is for research sites, it's the process of winning studies, essentially. So what are you seeing right now in terms of sponsors awarding studies? Are they putting things on hold? Are they delaying things? Still moving forward?
It's a mixture. I've seen studies still being awarded in the last 2 weeks. It seems like there was that 2 weeks ago, at least down here, I think when you all up north were starting to shut down, it was kind of that it was a very quiet week, let's just say, and we didn't know where it was going, and then we started hearing the last week of some awards coming through for sites, so that was exciting. At that point we realized there's light at the end of the tunnel. A lot of the companies are still going forward with site visibility, site selection, pre-awards, surveys. But then there are some companies that have just halted anything currently rolling, as well as any new startups. Pfizer and Roche are 2 sponsors that come to mind.
Right. And what's behind the halt? You understand the halt in new enrollment because clearly there's a shelter in place in large parts of the country. But for new studies going forward, what's the logic of that? Is that to redirect towards COVID trials, or is that just waiting to see?
My contact at Pfizer didn't really have an explanation, but what we think is that, there are still so many currently enrolling studies that have been put on hold. So probably for some of the larger companies to think about how to get them all started back up again. I mean, of course, some studies you still have the maintenance visits, a few are still enrolling. But then I would imagine, and this is what we're thinking, this week is our week of surveying. Again, I call it the temperature of the industry, and finding out if it's a matter of just the magnitude of starting up that many studies. You figure it's not just 1 state or 2 states or even the U.S., it's globally. So we're not sure if that is varied by sponsor size. So
got it. So essentially there's probably a 3-month hold on enrollment, which means that the entire pipeline gets pushed back 3 months, which means that if you're a sponsor, you might be saying, well, there's only so many trials I can handle. There's only so much capacity in my budget or resources. So that makes sense. But you're not necessarily seeing sponsors saying, no, we're not going to move forward with this. I'm assuming that's probably less the case because there's a fair amount of investment.
That's also the case. With those 2 big sponsors, they won't even talk about what's in their pipeline or look at feasibilities. It's just frozen. They know it's going to start up. In fact, they know there's going to be this bolus of new awards or new studies coming down, going through that selection process. So there'll be a major influx with some of the sponsors. But meanwhile, you have some sponsors that are still they'll do the remote SIVs. We've also seen sites that have gotten the green light this week, even.
Wow, nice.
But told to hold enrollment until a later date in April, and then they'll reevaluate. So it's been kind of across the board, which is exciting that some are still moving forward.
Yeah. And what are you seeing on the research site side? Are you seeing most sites are continuing to try to win studies and proceed, or are there some sites that have stopped trials altogether, or accepting new trials?
I haven't had anyone, when we're giving opportunities, say that at this time they don't want any more opportunities. I've had some sites where you can tell that they're probably stretched to the core, but I just think that they have to understand everybody is pretty much stretched to the core, both mentally and work-wise. So I haven't heard that. I've had a lot of sites that have cut down their schedules. So from 5 days, they've cut to 2 or 3 days based on their maintenance and screening open studies. Some sites I hear are opting possibly to close for a week and then maybe reopen, just because there's not enough maintenance visits, and then the following week try to schedule them all to try to book up the day. Layoffs I know are across the board in sites, or furlough, so that's an issue. And I know, I will say that some of the sponsors and CROs have been questioning or asking for sites to basically affirm that they will be okay once the studies start up, that they will be able to revamp, but we're all in the same boat, so we all will be able.
Do you think there's a portion of research sites, maybe more hospital based, that will continue, I guess, deprioritizing research even after the stay-at-home shelters in places are lifted, just because they may be anticipating ongoing COVID care requirements and need to redeploy resources?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. One of my BD members today, she used to work with a large CRO and was talking to one of her contacts, and the woman actually does some high-level cardiac studies in hospital. She's a monitor CRA for, and she said they are still going forward with good. All of those because they're so important, and those they're life-saving. So I think it's going to depend. I know with Pfizer, the gentleman stated that all life-saving studies will still continue to enroll new patients. So I think it just depends on what that inpatient study is, and probably if it's life-saving or something that they can put out a month or 2 months, for number one, the space, and number two, the participant safety as well as the staff.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. And what about the COVID trials? I mean, we hear about COVID trials moving forward. Are they any phase 2 site selection going on right now in your pipeline?
And we have not seen any phase 2 selection. I will tell you that in the last week, you keep hearing all these studies are going to be coming up. And I don't know if you and I had talked even, back in February, January, I was looking to see what studies, the coronavirus were coming out, and there was maybe I could find 5 to 7 companies. Moderna was one of them, and they were like, no, our first phase trials are month out, and totally months out, and then fast forward 5, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and they're already inpatient. So I have not seen any phase 2. I've had in the last 2 weeks sponsors and CROs looking for COVID treatment trials for both inpatient and possibly like a urgent care or emergency care kind of a setting where they can do infusions and where they're able to get the patients safely, in PPE, and then also be able to do the treatments have been infusions that I've seen come through. So right now, just the phase 1 and a lot of surveys in the last, since, it's only Tuesday today, I'd say since Wednesday, it's really ramped up where we're starting to get requests and then putting out to the sites, are you interested? Because now the CROs and even some of the sponsors now are trying to determine who can do what, who can test for diagnostics, who can test inpatient, outpatient, what phase, who only wants to do vaccines. So information collection right now.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm imagining the treatment trials will probably be, you'd have to be a hospital or emergency care, urgent care clinic to do the treatment trials. But I would imagine the vaccine trials might be open to outpatient clinics.
Yeah, because typically they're for healthy patients, typically are in vaccine studies. We haven't seen any phase 2 just of course the phase one, but which they typically last about 30 days, 45 days,
Hmm.
and I'm sure it's not difficult right now for them to find participants for this particular study.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to see what the FDA requirements are as far as phase two, because usually it's less than 100 participants or a couple hundred. So I'm wondering if to fast track now these phase two will be much larger participant pools, to move them along quicker to get that good data,
Yeah.
and then move it.
Maybe skip phase three, go right to it.
Yeah, who knows what they're gonna do? They're at it just seems like light speed.
Yeah.
Along.
Yeah, absolutely. So has any of this affected site selection criteria at all? Are you seeing any change in the feasibility questionnaire asked of sites, or not really?
Not particularly. I have been just asked by a couple, are your affiliate sites still open? Will they be open during this time? Probably for the study. They never tell you how quickly an opportunity is moving along. But probably if you're going through the feasibility, will someone be in there so they could do the phone PSV? Because we're so caught in this COVID, we forget that there's been billions of dollars spent on all these different therapies for so many important diseases, too, that are just kind of, I don't know, it's like being in a race car waiting for the start line. So I imagine, I don't know, I just picture a big sprint once we get to a better place in the future.
Yeah, seems like there'll be a backlog.
Yeah.
And a big catch up. This is over. Well, it's good to know. So any words of advice to research sites who are probably very anxious right now?
I do. I think the biggest thing is to have communication with your CROs and sponsors, and it could be just a general email blast to them, letting them know what you put in place in your site as far as patient safety. Even if you just think it's obvious, like increasing cleaning measures more or wearing different PPE. It could even be not allowing more than 10 individuals into a whole clinic at one time. Like, just to engage them, let them know that maybe an update every couple weeks, what's going on. Also update them with your remote capacity. Suggest remote monitoring, remote PSVs, be open to remote SIVs, remote IMs. Try to make your site as available as possible during this time. I think another thing too is communicate with your staff. It's a real scary time. You're a parent, running a company. It's scary on all different levels, and I think that to communicate with your staff will help you day by day, and for them to understand what the challenges are, financially, for the site. I mean, everybody wants their site to survive, so you kind of have to go right to that core, and just keep in communication with them. And I think the biggest thing is to think out of the box, and that's like my biggest in the last couple of weeks. I'm like, think out of the box. So if everyone's in this together, all the sites, they're struggling. So maybe if there's a site where you're a colleague and you're still friendly with them, but maybe that site has phase one capabilities that you don't have, but maybe your site is in a specialty area, then maybe collaborate. You take that phase one study, maybe that study is a phase one neurology study, maybe a Parkinson's, but you don't have the overnight capabilities, but you are the neurologist, and collaborate with that phase one. You could do all the visits and the overnights there, and it's a collaborative effort, and it's a way to build up your CV revenue, and as well as for that, the other partner too. So I think it's a lot of just thinking out of the box right now.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And the latest economic recovery package had a pretty good deal, I think, for small businesses. A lot of sites can look into for keeping the payroll at least alive. So I think that's going to be critical for a lot of research sites that are.
I think so too.
Pretty close to paycheck in terms of survival and cash flow.
Whether they're large or small too.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes the bigger you are, the harder you fall.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. Appreciate your time on such short notice, and best of luck. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.